Howdy, and welcome to the Breakaway Podcast. Thanks for listening. Breakaway is a Bible study that meets on the campus of Texas A&M. For more information on Breakaway, please visit breakawayministries.org. We hope you enjoy the talk.
Well, howdy! Okay, all right. Welcome back, guys. Welcome to Breakaway. Welcome to Fall 2015. We're so glad to see you. I want to say welcome back to the class of 2018. Are you in the house? Welcome back to 2017. Did y'all make it here tonight? There it is. Oh, okay. 2016. Are you in the house? I've been waiting to do that. Okay, 2015. Oh, look, there's still some energy left in them. There you go, guys. I love that. Well, and I want to say a special welcome to the class of 2019. Are you here? All down front, apparently. Okay, all right, I see you. All right. Man. Welcome back. Welcome to Fall 2015. Welcome to Breakaway. We're so glad you're here. It is back to school. And I don't know if you say it publicly or acknowledge it or not, but all of us back to school, there's a part of us that as we enter into this world, we want to make a good impression, right? I mean, we want to put our best foot forward. We want to come off right. We want to accentuate our best qualities, right? Freshmen, you've been mapping out what outfit you're going to wear on the first day of college and what outfit you're going to wear on the second day of college and kind of thinking through all that, laying it out, right? Upperclassmen, not doing that as much. But you've been figuring out how to dial in your answer when people start to ask you what you're doing with your life. You're trying to figure out how to say, well, I don't really know, but I'm going to do this internship, and in 5 years I'm taking over the universe. You know, you kind of think it through, or at least try to figure out how to make it sound like you have no clue is somehow honorable, like trust in the Lord with my life, man, or something like that. All of us are trying to come off looking good, trying to make a good impression, but here's the reality, and it's sad, but it's true. As much as we're all trying to do that, there's a certain constituency among us that no matter how hard we try to avoid it, we're gonna have an embarrassing moment this week. You just are. Someone's got to do it, and there's a percentage of us that are. You're gonna be the one to crash your bike in front of the MSC. Just eat it, and somebody's got to do it, and it's going to be you. There's one of you here tonight. Some of you are going to walk just a little too far, a little too fast to class, and then you're going to sit down, and that sweat's going to start. That starts getting into your clothes, and you're trying to negotiate with it, like, please, no, don't do this. Don't, but it's too late. You look like you've been in a sauna. Some of you might be like that kid whose text got put on Reddit because he drunk texted his prof saying, hey dude, you're an MF and G and I'm sorry you're bald. Also, I need an extension on my paper. Or maybe like that kid in Taiwan who accidentally tripped over himself at the museum and shoved his hand through a $1.5 million picture. Yeah. We've all been there, you know, and here's the thing. I mean, even one of the last times I was at Breakaway was sitting back there. We had a guy from a publishing house come to visit us to talk to us about this writing deal. So I really wanted to host him well. And so I took him out to dinner at like a nice restaurant before. And we got there and I broke one of my own personal rules. Never order the fish when you're not on the coast. And but I did it, and I was sitting right back in that section, and I remember TA was speaking that night, doing a great job, and like in the middle of the sermon, all of a sudden I felt my stomach kind of go, ooh, and I was like, no. And then it was like that little guy inside of me was like, he ate the fish, we're gonna have to evacuate everything. I repeat, evacuate. And I'm like, no. And then I just start praying for TA to wrap it up, that cold sweat starting, and I had to do that deal. It was at break, I had to run down the steps, kind of pushing past people, find a bathroom, right? And then I had to start texting guy on my staff, like, can you please take this representative home because I'm in the bathroom and can't get out? And he wasn't answering. So I had to, one by one, text every single person on the staff at Breakaway, like, please, God, someone drive this man back to the hotel. I can't. I'm in the bathroom. No, I don't want to explain why. I'm trying to map out how I'm going to get to my car. And that was like one of the last breakaways of last year. You know, it just kind of didn't go how I thought it would in my mind, right? And here's the thing, embarrassing situations like that, what's the best thing to do? It's to talk about it, right? Because that's how you diffuse a situation like that. You share it with people because we can all laugh about it because we've all been in situations like that. And so when something embarrassing happens to us, we can share it with people. It's not going to run people off. Often it actually pulls people in. It creates community because we've all been there when something embarrassing happens to us. But here's the reality tonight I want to bring us around, and it's this. All of us have had embarrassing things happen to us, but all of us, if we're honest in here tonight, have some embarrassing things about us. And those are less fun to talk about. Things about us that we just wish were different. Things about us that we would change if we could. And not simple, shallow things. I mean deep things about us that we go, I don't like this about me. This is a part of me I don't want people to see. And maybe it's just a way you conduct yourself among people, that you do stuff and you walk away from conversations and you go, I don't know why I do that. I'm so stupid. Why do I keep doing that? And you beat yourself up because there's a way of interacting with people you're embarrassed about. Some of you, maybe it's something in your past that you go, there's something about me that if these people knew this, they would not want to hang out with me. And maybe some of you have some things in your past you're not proud of, and maybe for some of you, your defense mechanism is, let me judge people and push them away, because if they got to know me, they would judge me, and so let me just preemptively push them away, because I don't want them to see some things I'm not proud of in me. Others of you, it's some addictions, some habits you're embarrassed about. They're not funny. I don't want to share that with these people. I don't want anyone to know that about me. There's places I go, things I do, things I think, things I've said, things about my life, things about me I would change if I could, and I can't, and I'm not real proud of these things. And I want to talk about that stuff tonight. Right? Because inside of us, all of us have that feeling of shame. Of shame. And it's especially exacerbated when we get around people that we think are pure and perfect, right? Like I remember hearing a guy tell a story that was a sex addict and had a long, devastated story of sexual addiction that by the grace of God he was recovering from. And as a believer, he was offered to go on a talk show and talk about it in front of people, this Christian TV show. So he went on the show and he was one of the guests. The other guests were a guy and a girl that were engaged, and they sat him next to them on the couch. And as they did this Christian TV show, they interviewed them first, and they talked about how both of them had kept themselves completely pure sexually. They had never even kissed. They were waiting for kissing until they were married, and they were talking about that, and the host was talking all about the importance of purity and how proud of them they was and how amazing that is and how godly that is, how pleasing to the Father that is. And he says he's just sitting there next to him shrinking like, I want to get off this couch. I want to disappear. And he said finally they turned to him and go, your story's been the opposite of that, right? And they start wheeling out all the ugly, sad parts of his life. And they said, I bet you're so sorry for those horrible things you've done and were addicted to that you're probably not even tempted by them anymore. And he said he looked at them and went, No, I still am. I hate that about me, but there's some things in me that I wish were different, and I can't beat it on my own, and God is gracious to me in this moment. But he said in that moment, man, he said, I wanted to disappear. And embarrassment's not even the right word for it. The word we have for it is shame. And shame is a powerful force. You know, guilt says I did something bad. I messed that up. Shame says I am bad. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. And let me tell you something I've learned in my years of ministering among you guys. I've met so many of you, all kinds, from the biggest of you to the most petite of you, to the most put together, I'm going to take over the world people, to the most, I don't know what I'm doing here people. I've sat and visited with so many of you. And can I say what I know about so many of you, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, every one of you I've sat and counseled with has things about your life that you wish were different, you're not proud of, that bring you shame, that you'd like to hide. And the reality is you go, man, why are we talking about this day one? What are you doing with this? Well, here's the reality. As we enter into the semester, we're trying to put our best foot forward, our best face forward. But the assumption of that is there's a part of us we do want to hide. We don't want people to see things. We don't want them to know about us. And the more that becomes highlighted and exacerbated, we feel like we're disconnected people. Disconnected from other people. You kind of know me, but you don't know all of me. Disconnected from God because we're playing this silly game, and even disconnected from ourselves. It makes us feel disconnected the more we try to hide the shame in us. And I got to tell you something tonight. God does not want that story for you. Jesus does not want that story for you. And God wants to do something in you tonight. And let me tell you something. I want to talk to you about it by showing you how Jesus arrived on the scene. In the Gospel of Luke, when Jesus showed up on the scene, words like adorable or even approachable aren't the words that would come to mind. When Jesus shows up on the scene in the book of Luke, heaven is ripping open. Kings are bowing. Demons are being dismissed with a word. He's preaching powerfully saying, I am the fulfillment of prophecy. When Jesus shows up in Luke, where you get the feeling he is exuding power, he's exuding authority. He doesn't come across adorable. He comes off intimidating. And then in Luke chapter 5, Luke, one after another, starts to give us rapid-fire stories of Jesus beginning to move out and interact with different people. And he tells a bunch of these short little stories all together because they give us a full picture of how Jesus interacts with people. And as Jesus connects with them, they're all people that he hits at some of their worst moments. It's Jesus intersecting with them in that most broken part. It's him coming and sitting with them in that room. And I want us to look at that because we're going to see how did Jesus treat people in their shame, because it gives us a picture of how he wants to deal with us in our shame. And so in Luke chapter 5, Jesus comes on the scene. He's preaching powerfully. He's doing miracles. And as he does miracles, crowds begin to gather. They're interested in this guy. And so people start to flock around him. He's getting popular. And at one moment, there's a big crew around him. So he just hops into Simon Peter's boat and says, hey, row back a little bit. And he rows back a little bit so Jesus can stand out on this boat so the crowd can see him. And the water conducts his voice well. And he begins to preach this crowd of people from this boat, a massive crowd. And he's in the middle of doing that, sitting in Peter's boat, just dropping wisdom on these people, going crazy, amazing sermon. And in the middle of doing that, suddenly he's giving the sermon. He just turns to Peter, totally puts him on blast and goes, hey, let's go catch some fish, man. And he does it in front of God and everybody. And Peter in that moment has to own up to the second of saying to him, well, I just fished all night and I caught nothing. And that's a pretty embarrassing thing to have to say. That when you're Peter the fisherman, like that's how you would introduce yourself. What do you do? What are you about? I'm Peter the fisherman, the fisherman. I'm a man who catches fish. How's that going for you? Well, you know, trying to work some things out. There's not really a lot of them right now. And try doing that in front of a couple thousand people. Why don't we catch some fish, Peter? Because I can't. That's humiliating, you know? I mean, if you really think about that, of saying, that's what I do. That's the thing that brings me. That's what I contribute, and I can't do it. To have to confess to people there are things in my life I can't control, and I'm a victim to powers that I can't manipulate. That's not a great moment. And so when Peter talks to him, he says, we toiled all night and took nothing. Why say that? I'll tell you why I think he said that. I think Jesus touched down on a place of shame in Peter, and he reacts to it. It's interesting. The National Institute of Mental Health did a study in 2011, and they found that as far as the brain is concerned, physical pain is an intense an experience as social rejection and hurt. They fire the same parts of the brain. What they're saying is that when you experience physical pain, the same parts of your mind register when you experience social rejection. The brain reads it the same way. That when you feel socially humiliated, the same fight or flight reflex kicks in. And I think for Peter, he gets ashamed, and so he reacts. And we don't know the tone of how he said it. Maybe he did it passively, like, well, I fished all night and I got nothing because I suck. I really do as a fisherman. I don't know. Maybe it came out as fight. He got aggressive. Well, I'll tell you why, genius, we shouldn't go fishing, because I fished all night and I caught nothing, okay? You tell me to fish in front of these people. What's the matter with you? What do you do for a living? Carpentry? Then give me another couple fishing lessons. He could have come hot. He could have come passive-aggressive of, yeah, I guess we can go out. I mean, it's what I like. You know what you're doing. You've been building cabinets, so tell me a few things about fishing. That's cool, man. We don't know how it came out, but I tell you what we do know. He didn't have to say that. He could have just said, let's go fish, but he has to say, well, I fished all night and caught nothing. Let me just tag that in there. But man, I tried and I can't do it. And they went out there, and the passage tells us they let the nets down. And in verse 6 it says, when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and the nets were breaking. And they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come help them. And they came and it filled both boats so that they began to sink. And it dawns on him, the powers that victimize me, over which I have no control, this guy has all control over them. And he gets very exposed. And there's no hiding, there's no pretending, there's no justifying in that moment. And so Peter does the only thing he can think to do. In verse 8, it says, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down on Jesus' knees, saying, depart from me, I'm a sinful man, O Lord. When shame gets in the presence of imperfection like that, it says, get the light off me, get away from me. I don't want to be seen like this. And he looks at Jesus and says, you don't want to get involved with me. Okay, you've seen all the good and bad. You can go now. You don't want to be a part of this. And what I love about Jesus is he says, no. No. There's a part of us in our shame that wants to push God away and push other people away. And can I tell you some good news tonight? That I don't know what forces you feel like you're out of control, what things victimize you, what difficulties haunt you. I remember for me in college one time, I felt like I was good at school, figuring it out, and then I hit a couple courses I had to take to pass, and I couldn't get them. And it was particularly highlighted by the fact that I would sit in class and I was totally lost. We were working out these economic problems and I was always wrong. I was never not wrong. And the people I was with could all figure it out. And I remember the guy sitting next to me goes, this is pretty easy, right? And I said, no. And he talked me through it and he's like, do you get it now? And I said, no. And for the first time in my life, I sat with tutors and friends and sat with the prof and all this stuff, and I couldn't get it. And man, it just brought up all these memories for me. It was like suddenly I was 10 years old again, and I could just remember in elementary school all these people that called me stupid and talked about how I wasn't smart and how I wasn't going to add up to stuff, and I had bought some of that stuff, and I had spent so much of my life trying to fight against that. And here was all that shame again. And some of you, maybe you have some shame in your life, and can I just tell you something tonight? Jesus is in the business of taking shame away. Peter says, get away from me, I'm a mess. And Jesus says, no, Peter, I'm actually going to make you something new. I'm going to make you into someone who can change the world, Peter. I have a plan not to push you away in your shame, but to lift you up and to make you something new. And that's what he can do with you tonight. Jesus is in the business of taking our little lives and making them far more than we could ask or imagine. He has the power to take your shame away. And here's the good news, he wants to. He wants to. The next guy that comes up to Jesus is someone Jesus probably should have gotten away from. Luke tells us in verse 12, and he went into one of the cities, and there came a man full of leprosy. That is not good. Leprosy was a disease that was contagious. This guy is full of leprosy. So back then, if you had leprosy, you had to be ostracized. You had to be banished from the community. That was your shame, and you couldn't hide it. You had to get away from us. And it was the same law that talked about sin, that when you were a sinner, sin damages community. Sin hurts us. When you lie, when you steal, when you murder, it's a community damaging thing. And so sin pushes you away. And so it got these connotations. Sickness doesn't mean that it's your sin that made you sick, but they got wrapped up back then of both of those things are unclean, banished, get away, you're shameful. And yet here this guy in the midst of his shame starts hearing about Jesus. And he just risks, man. He just takes an incredible social risk. I can either stay locked up in the isolation of my addiction, my shame, my thing that I can't stand about me and demonstrably can't fix, or I can take a risk and bring it out to Jesus. And he just walks out to Jesus and he says to him, and when he saw Jesus, he fell on his face and begged him, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." What's interesting about that is he says, "Lord, you can make me clean." He knows Jesus has the power. What he's not sure about is if Jesus wants to. And that's what he says to him. "I know you can make me clean. I just don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to." And some of you think that way. Some of you, even as I talk about God can take your shame away, Jesus can heal you, you go, I know. Jesus loves you, I know. But in your mind you say, he loves me because he's supposed to, because he has to love me. And yeah, he can take shame away, but he kind of puts up with me. Some of you, that's the way you think God sees you. That when you come to him with your sins and ask for forgiveness, he goes, I guess, I love you. Right? But you don't think he really likes you. There was an old Jimmy Stewart movie where he asked a guy that was about to marry a girl. He said, "Do you like her, Sam?" And the guy said, "I love her." He said, "I didn't ask you that." He said, "I asked, do you like her?" Some of you think, yeah, God loves me, but you don't think he likes you. And this guy comes to Jesus and says, I know you can make me clean. I know you can. I just don't know if you want to. And in verse 13 it says, and Jesus stretched out his hand and he touched him. What is that like? To be someone denied human contact for years, that isolation, and have this man touch you. This is Vinicio Riva. He's had a difficult life. At age 15, he was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis type 1, which is a disease that spreads painful boils on the body. And as you can see, it's impossible to hide. And you can imagine the strong reactions he gets from people. His father refuses to touch him. Strangers on the bus have yelled at him, "Get away from me, don't stand next to me." And he's gotten the memo, you are unwanted. And they say of people with his condition, the psychological damage is far worse than the physical, as painful as it is. And most of them catch the hint and they never leave the house until they die. It's just easier that way. But he decided to go with his aunt to visit the Pope. They didn't think they'd get anywhere near him. But as they showed up there, they kept ushering his wheelchair forward, and they realized we're right up against the barricade. And as they saw the Pope getting ready to emerge, he said, I kind of readjusted my expectations. I figured he would probably touch my aunt's hand because she was leaning out, reaching it out. He said he'd probably give me a cursory glance and then look away real quick because that's kind of normally how it goes. What he got was entirely unexpected. The Pope walked straight up to him and hugged him for a full minute. His aunt said, he held him so tightly I wasn't sure he'd give him back to me. Then he put his hands on his head and he kissed him. And when they interviewed the man later, he said, I felt like I was in paradise. And his aunt said, he has never been the same since. The way he sees himself, the way he interacts with the world, he's changed. Now, the Pope didn't heal the man. Can't. And yet even that human kindness had a profound effect on him. Here this man was a leper, pushed away from community. And he says, if you're willing, you can make me clean, but I'm not sure you are. And Jesus puts his hands on him. And Jesus says to him, I will. Be clean. Jesus could have just said, be clean. He says, I will. It's the word thelo. It means I desire. It means I want to. Some of you believe God can take your shame away. You're just not sure if he wants to. And what I love about Jesus is he looks at this man and the guy says, I know I'm a mess. I have some things about me I'm not proud of in my past. I have some things that I've done. I have some things I am presently doing that I'm so ashamed of. And you can make me clean, but I don't think or know if you want to. And Jesus says, I want to. I want to. Be clean. The reality is, can Jesus touch you, heal you right away from some of your issues? Yeah, but I'll tell you something. The reality is, and as you see it move on, Jesus, as he starts to heal this guy, it makes him pretty popular among sick people, as you can imagine. When you're healing lepers, world gets around the sick community. And they start flocking to Jesus, and it becomes this thing where they think, oh, he's just here to kind of take away the external dirtiness of our illness, and he has to set it straight. I don't just want to deal with the external problems of your shame. I want to go deeper. And so as he's preaching to a group of people, sick people are trying to get in. Some guys take their buddy who's paralyzed. They can't get him to Jesus, so they rip the tiles of the roof off and lower this paralyzed guy down at the feet of Jesus, like you do with all your friends. You're like, we can't get into him, let's tear the roof off this joint, right? Get that brother down there. That's what they did. And Jesus could have healed him. Jesus could have healed him by speaking. Jesus could have touched him and healed him. Jesus decides to make an example of him and says, hey, stay paralyzed for a second. Go with me on this. Your sins are forgiven. And the religious people in the back are freaking out. They're throwing penalty flags like, you can't say that. You can't say that. Only God can say that. You can't say that. It doesn't make any sense for a human being to say that. Like if you robbed him and I came up and was like, hey, I forgive you, man. I forgive you for robbing that guy. You'd be like, that gets us a whole lot of nothing. Like, what does that mean for anything? Jesus looks at this guy and says, I forgive all that you've done, man. I forgive you. Pharisees are freaking out. You can't say that. Jesus says, which do you think's easier? To tell him you're forgiven or to tell him to rise up and walk? Which is easier? Which is easier? Yeah, they were about as silent as you are. The answer is it depends. In one sense, to say your sins are forgiven is easier because there's no way to verify that. We don't know if it really happened or not. And so to say, get up and walk is a lot harder because we'll know in about 2 seconds if I got the juice to pull that off or not. But on the other side, only God can forgive sins. Only God can. And Jesus puts the two together. And so that you know that I have the authority to forgive sins. Get up and walk. And that man rises, and in that moment, Jesus is showing us that he doesn't want to just deal with the external shame, the external problems. He wants to deal with the root cause of sin. And I'm not saying this man's sin made him paralyzed, but what I am saying is at the root of all of our shame is sin. Sin. Sin you've done or sin that's been done against you. You think about that. Every bit of shame we experience in here, it's because somebody either sinned against us or we sinned. And all sin is saying, I don't trust you, God, with this area. Maybe for some of you, somebody said, I know God says how to use sexuality, but I'm going to use it this way, and they used it in a way that hurts you. Their sin brought shame into your life. Or some of you used sexuality in a way that you said, I'm just going to do this, and you did it, and it brought shame into you. And all of us at the root of it, there's a thing where we said, I don't trust God with this part of my life, with this way of making decisions, with this thing. And when we walk away from God and push away from Him, it breaks something in us if we know suddenly not only that deed wasn't right, but I'm not right. That's what shame is. And Jesus comes and says, I don't want to just deal with the external problems. I want to get into the root causes. What drives you to that addiction? What brokenness in you is leading to that way of acting? I want to put my hands there and forgive you there. That's the beauty of Jesus. He's coming to us and saying, I want to heal. I want to take shame away. I want to take sin away. I want to make you into what you were meant to be. And what's the key to be a part of that? It's real simple. It's real simple. You acknowledge that you're sick. It says after he healed that paralyzed guy, he blew up. It says people were astonished by Jesus, and so suddenly Jesus can't go anywhere anymore. It's like One Direction being at the mall. You just can't do it. You know, the One Direction, the band. Is everyone clear on that? It's not walking One Direction. Never mind. Anyways, Jesus gets to a point where he just can't go anywhere, right? He's just moving around. He's too popular. All of a sudden, all eyes are on him. And as all eyes are on him, he does something in this last moment. It says, after becoming crazy famous, it says he went out and he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax booth. That word saw is not just the word like noticed, it's the word observed. That Jesus is walking around, he's got masses of people around him, and he sees that guy in the tax booth. Now, tax collectors were the scum of the earth back then. Because if you were a tax collector, you bought the right from the government to take government taxes from people, and the understanding was you marked up what you took away to make yourself rich. And they were all rich, so everyone knew you're taking advantage of us. But it's government-sanctioned robbery, so we can't do anything about it. Except hate you and make you feel really socially uncomfortable in our town. But Levi wasn't even that guy. Because that guy became rich and he would hire out people. And he would hire people to sit in the little booths to collect taxes. And so Levi didn't even have the best qualities of the big bad guy. You know, like in a movie, you're like, that guy's really evil, but at least he's evil with a little bit of courage. Or, you know, he's got a lot of charisma, as evil as he is, you know. Levi was like the scum. You know, the good guy roughs up for information. You know, the pathetic one. That's Levi. He's in the booth, man. You don't get a more pathetic human being. And Jesus has all the attention of this crowd. And it says he walks out and he looks over and he sees Levi in the booth. And he walks straight towards him. He says, I want you. I want you to come with me. And there are commentators that were like, he must have met him earlier, because I don't know how such a short message from Jesus would get Levi to stand up. But yeah, I think I know, because Jesus just preached a sermon by walking over to him. The social implications were loud and clear. You are the most banished person, the most unwelcome in this community, but not to me. I don't care how far gone you think you are. I want you. And to understand that we have a God like that in the midst of the most broken, sad parts of us, he comes to us and says, I'm going to lift you up. I want to. I want to heal the broken things in you. I'm coming for you, Levi. A God like that, you throw a party for a God like that. And that's what Levi does. He throws a party and invites every sinner he can think of, which is all this is, by the way. We were praying about that as a band and as a staff earlier. All this is, if you don't know what Breakaway is, we're a bunch of Levi's throwing a party for a bunch of sinners, right? Celebrating a Jesus that came to us in our lowest and our saddest moments. Some of the religious people balk at it. They don't like that Jesus is doing this. Why is he hanging out with those people? Why is Jesus on Northgate on a Thursday? And I love Jesus' answer, and this is where we'll close. He says, those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. I've not come to call the righteous, but the sinner to repentance. I love that. Because in 2 sentences, not only does he express God's heart, he dismantles false assumptions about God. Some people, you walked in here, and in the most modern presentations of Jesus, it lands in 2 camps. Some of you think he's a condemner. That Jesus just wags his finger at people and like, you did it again, didn't you? That's just so bad, shame on you. Some of you didn't even want to come here tonight because you knew it would just be, oh, I'm just going to feel judged. Some of you came here tonight because you feel like you deserve to feel judged. Be pushed away, shame on you. And Jesus says, no. Don't do that. He says, do physicians do that? Do doctors go, ooh, you're sick, get away from me? No, ooh, no. No! That would be a terrible doctor. Doctors hang out with sick people. And Jesus goes, I'm not trying to push sinners away. If you're a mess, that's who I'm looking for. I'm coming for you in the mess. I'm leaning towards you. Jesus says, I'm someone who's leaning into you, right? And yet the funny thing is, other people present Jesus as just the acceptor. You go, yeah, that is my Jesus. He just goes, get in here, bring it in, bro. I just love you, and you're okay. And here's like, let me tell you something. You just do you. You do you. You just be yourself. And you know what? All you need to do is just become comfortable with who you are and let that freak flag fly and go crazy, right? And that's Jesus. But listen to what he says. He says, I'm the physician, and I came here for the sick. what's the assumption? What's the assumption at the party? He's sitting at this party and he was like, hey, I'm the doctor. I'm here for sick people. And they're like, hey, what's the assumption there? You're sick. There's something wrong with you. He's like, yes, I want to be with you, and there's something wrong with you I'm here to heal. Right? And so I'm not condemning and pushing away, but I'm not just accepting either. Jesus wants to change you, and not change you into someone different, but someone better. You don't coddle illness. You don't go, but it's my cancer. I love this cold. It's a part of me. No, it's a parasite. Get it out so you can be fully you. And Jesus says, there's parts of you that I don't want you to hide. I don't want you to defend. I don't want you to pretend aren't there. He says, I'm here for the sick. And he says, I didn't call the righteous to repentance, but the sinner. What's he saying there? There's some people that don't need sickness? No. What he's saying to those people is, you want my healing? If you want my healing, it begins by acknowledging you need it. I know people that refuse to acknowledge they're physically sick, and so I'm watching their bodies waste away. How do you get well? When do you go to a doctor? When you know you're sick. Jesus can heal you. He wants to take shame away. He wants to make you what you were meant to be. He wants to heal some of the deepest part of you that you thought could never be made straight. He wants to make straight. Jesus can change you. All you need to do is admit that you're sick and you need him. Admit, I am ashamed of this part of me. I'm not proud of it, and I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to defend. I'm going to confess. And it's an exposure that we get healing. What's the common denominator in all these people? There's no hiding. I'm a sinful man, Lord. Yes, you are. But I'm bringing you to me to make you a fisher of men. I'm unclean, God. Yes, you are. But I'm about to make you clean. I'm stuck. Yes, you are. But I'm about to set you free. I'm an outcast. Yes, you are. But I've come to bring you into the family of God. That's our Jesus. That's his story. That's our story for those who want to know him. My sweet little daughters are obsessed with superheroes. And obsessed is the right word. They know the theme song of Captain America, Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk, which is a very much lesser known theme song, Superman. They know a lot about him. And it kind of weirded me out for a while how obsessed they are about him. I mean, they're always wearing the superhero clothes. I was getting a little concerned that they're never not a superhero. And I thought, am I doing something wrong here? And then I read this quote by C.S. Lewis. He said, since it is so likely that children will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of heroes. We have met some cruelty and it's brought shame in our lives. The good news is we have a hero. We have a hero, and he's come for us.
Well, howdy, and welcome to the Breakaway Podcast. My name is Hannah, and I'm sitting here with Ben Stewart. We just launched our first Breakaway of the semester last night in Reed Arena. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's just so good to be back, and it's just awesome to see. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, you've been able to come and see it. But just to see thousands of college students singing together, worshiping together, it just does not get old. It's so powerful. And last night was no different. I mean, just such a sweet, special night of worship. We had all kinds of special guests come and lead worship. You know, Jeff Johnson guiding it, but we had some great friends, Brett Yonker and Stan from Passion City Church, Molly Moody. We had some friends from the Austin Stone, Jimmy and Jolisa, leading a powerful time of worship. And it was just an incredible launch, man. Feel amazing about it.
Yeah, it was fun for me to get to see. We have about 224 volunteers that actually help us run the ministry. And about 70 of those are brand new. And just seeing them running around doing what they're supposed to do on a Tuesday night, like, it was so fun to see them elated to be part of the ministry and part of a Tuesday night, and fun to get to see them in action for the first time.
Absolutely. And to think about, it's college students setting this party for college students. You know, we talked about that, of just, we are Levi throwing a party for our friends and come meet the Jesus we found. And I just feel like these college students have got their head around that. And if you're listening to this and went to college or in college, I don't know what you did with your college career or whatever, but it's just amazing for me to see what these students are doing and how they serve. I'm inspired by it. I go, man, that's just beautiful. And I hope my kids are like that. And it's just unreal to see. And it was an amazing night because we had, we didn't make this a big global push to everyone, but we've been celebrating 25 years of Breakaway. We didn't push that a lot with students because it's like, that's older than college students, but it started 25 years ago. I wasn't here back then. I was just a kid. And, but we had the original 4 roommates with us last night.
It was awesome.
Yeah. And a number of people that through the years are the reason we're here. And so it was just really special for us as a staff to see generations of faithfulness there with us, but all of us worshiping one name, Jesus, together was just such a sweet night. So amazing.
Yeah, it was fun to see all those folks that really did. Back in 1989, you know, I met the office manager who helped start up Breakaway, and get to talk with them and really get to see the ministry, and them get to see the ministry where it is now was fun. So. Yeah,
it was a special night, just unreal, and a great launch to the semester. I can't wait to see what God's going to do. We've got pretty special stuff happening. We announced it last night, but just to lay it out here too, next week we won't be in Reed Arena. We're going back out to Simpson Drill Field in the dead center of campus. And why are we doing that? You know, it's actually easier to move indoors for Breakaway to some other venue, but we feel like we want to be like Jesus. He said he came to seek and to save the lost. And that was really a lot of what this message was about, of how he's leaning towards the marginal person. And so for us, we thought, if we have a week outside of Reed, let's be outdoors in the center of campus so we can reach the maximum number of people. And Simpson provides that opportunity. And so we are passionate about that, excited about that. It's going to be amazing. Silver Taps is that night, which is, if you're not familiar with A&M has a military history, and Silver Taps is incredible because once a month, imagine this, once a month, these students flip off all the lights on campus, quiet all sounds, gather together in Academic Plaza and listen to Silver Taps play, a 21-gun salute, you know, a volley, just to honor the fellow students that died the previous month. It's a solemn, beautiful service that happens just a few feet from Simpson Drill Field, which concerned us a bit of like, oh my gosh, is that going to run into each other? But we met with representatives from the university, and we're going to move Breakaway early to 8:30 on Simpson Drill Field. It's going to be incredible. And then we're all going to move together to Silver Taps, and it's going to be an incredible night. And so I can't wait for next week. I think students were excited about it. I know we are as a staff. And so I don't know where you are listening to this, but we're recording this the week prior. So listen to this as fast as you can. Get in your car, drive down from Montana or wherever you are, you know, make it over. And you're not going to want to miss this night. It's going to be pretty special.
Yeah. So Simpson at 8:30 next Tuesday. Be there.
Yeah. And, you know, in terms of, sometimes we use the back end of this podcast to talk about the message and where it's going and what was the purpose of it. And there's obviously so much in Luke 5 I didn't cover because I wanted to sweep over what Luke was doing in a broad sense of very early in Jesus' ministry, just wanting to show he was constantly moving towards people in their moments of deepest shame and bringing a life-changing, life-giving love to them. And so pray along with us, if you would, for this semester. That's what we want to bring out to students, is there's people on campus and that just feel like they're outside the circle of people that God would be interested in or really want to make a difference in their life. And I just want people to, and you too, listening to this, to know the love of Jesus, to know that he is seeking, he's looking for the Levi's in the tax booth and saying, I want you to follow me. He's coming to the Peters and saying, I want you to walk with me, and I'm going to make you into something new. You are sick where you are broken, but you come to me with that, and I heal, I restore. And so our hope is to get that message out. So I won't re-preach the sermon, but just hear that. That's our heart for Breakaway. That's going to be our heart this semester. It's just really calling anybody, everybody. If you don't think you are, we want you to hear in no uncertain terms, Jesus is leaning towards you and inviting you in.
That's right.
Into his family, into his love, into his life-changing grace. And we hope you'll know that and receive that and believe it and be changed by it. So that's our heartbeat. We're so excited about all that God has in store in fall 2015. It's going to be unbelievable. So thanks for jumping in with us. Share this podcast, share our app, share it all with as many people as you can to jump on board with us, because we're excited about where God's taking us.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. Again, we'll be at Simpson next week at 8:30. And join us then.